Legalize Democracy. My group, Ultimate Civics, is a project of Earth Island Institute. We are a member of this coalition, as is Jeff Belchin with Reclaim Democracy. He'll be talking next. But the campaign to legalize democracy frames Citizen United as a sovereignty issue, as a clash of human values versus corporate values, as a clash of democracy versus capitalism. And I'm going to take this story the way I came into it, which was by a very circuitous route, okay? Starting with when I grew up back in Wisconsin. I was a 13-year-old, the oldest of 3 children. 1967, I would walk to middle school and birds were falling out of the air dying, robins. And I went to my father to ask why. And my father, a paper salesman, put my hands in a cup, put a dying robin in them, and explained the neurotoxin DDT. He gave me Rachel Carson's book, Silent Spring, next. I read that at 13, and I watched my father as he sued the state of Wisconsin over the use of DDT. Wisconsin became the first state to ban it. The lawyer and the biologist for environmental defense staged out of our home, our family home. I went away to college. I wanted to become a marine biologist like Rachel Carson. And with a lesson from my father that when you see something wrong, you step up. You step up. So I fast forward now, we're going to fast forward, went from one coast to the other coast, and after 13 years of schooling, I decided I would take one summer off after I finished my doctorate at the University of Washington and just go up to Alaska, just for the summer. And that was 25 years ago now. I landed in Cordova. This is a small fishing village on the east side of Prince William Sound, and 2,500 people, and when in Rome, do like the Romans. So I bought a commercial fishing boat in Permanent, and I was a salmon fisherman for 10 years through the Exxon Valdez oil spill. 4 years I fished before it, but one morning on March 24th, 1989, we all woke up in our community to the news that Exxon, well, we had the big one. I was one of the first ones to fly over the spill, and literally what you're looking at here is, up to this point, North America's largest oil spill, although that might be challenged now. The spill at the time killed more wildlife than any other spill in the world, still to this day. But what you're also looking at is the most profitable tanker voyage in history. This spill generated $2.5 billion of economic activity in the form of a cleanup. That $2.5 billion boosted the entire gross domestic product for the state of Alaska. And when I went into lobby as a volunteer for stronger oil spill prevention and response measures for the next 3 years, I was actually told by many state legislators, why should I listen to you? My constituents made money on this spill. And so, that was a little confusing how our economy, which got trashed in Cordova, how that oil spill could be good for it, okay? But hold that thought for now, because the story did not end in 1989. This is what our beaches still look like to this day. I have not been home that much since 2004. I was out on the beaches in 2006. Watch down here. I take high school students out now when I'm home in March. We dig a pit about 1.5 feet deep, pour a bucket of seawater in. The surrounding beach rock is so porous and so saturated with oil that the oil flows down into the pit and then rises up to the surface. Exxon calls these beaches clean. The Coast Guard decided they were clean, and the cleanup ended in 1992. So how do you think wildlife can survive on beaches that look like this still to this day? The sound has not recovered, and it's primarily because of what happened in '89 when the oil coated our beaches. This is where the salmon spawn, the herring spawn on these beaches. We were told there would only be short-term harm from oil. This is what you're going to hear with Louisiana too. Don't worry, it will only be short-term harm. This is not what we found. We said, how are the eggs going to survive this oil bath? How are the embryos, the fry, the juvenile fish? We said, we're going to wait to see if the eggs that were spawned on these beaches can survive and grow up to become adults, and if those adult fish can reproduce. And it turns out they couldn't. Our fish runs completely collapsed in 1993. Completely. So we were a fishing town with no fish. And I'm going to tell a little bit more about that story, but part of what we did was we went to court. And I have been a member of a mandatory class action lawsuit. We have, I have been working with 80 law firms for 20 years fighting Exxon. And in the end, we lost. We got paid 10 cents on the dollar. Most of my friends recovered 7 to 10% of what they lost, and I personally have friends whose individual share of the punitive damage award exceeds their bankruptcy, is not enough to pay for their bankruptcy filing. This is now, 21 years after this has happened. So in Cordova, we realized that what's carved in the marble of our Supreme Court, equal treatment under law, doesn't work anymore. This is a premise, this is an assumption. If this assumption is invalidated by these corporations that own so much money that they can buy evidence and tilt the entire playing field of our legal system, then the legal system is no longer, we do not have equal treatment under the law anymore. If it doesn't work for us in Cordova, it's not going to work for anybody else in America. So we began to ask the question in Cordova, how did this happen? How did these corporations get this big that they can manipulate our entire legal system, our entire government, our entire political system? At the same time as we were asking, there's two things that happened here. We also had to rebuild our own economy. So, subsequently, we learned a little exercise in Cordova called a community unity exercise that I've now done in 28 states around the country since 2004. It's a very simple exercise. It can be done in polarized situations, and it helps people refocus on their humanity and what they have in common with each other, rather than their differences. And it's a question that identifies shared values, creates a common collective vision, and helps people take collective action. And it's very simple. How to do it is actually posted on our website, ultimatecivics.org. But basically, we give people 3 minutes to answer each of the following questions. To identify values, what do you like about your community? The vision is, what do you want your community to look like in 20 years? And the action, what steps would you take to make those differences? When I facilitate this exercise in a community, it actually takes about 6 hours to do it and get everybody's input. But I also have done it in classrooms across America, from 5th grade all the way through university. And here's an example of what a bunch of little 5th graders said in Santa Barbara for 3 minutes of scribbling on a piece of butcher paper. And 3 minutes is really too long for little kids. You end up with rainbows and hearts and flowers, okay? But you also end up with some interesting stuff, okay? So here's some of the stuff. Best friends, my mommy and daddy, my home, my cat, dog, or animals, ocean, mountains, water, surfboard, is California, peace, and candy. Okay? Now, the purpose in doing this exercise and sharing it is to say that if the campaign to legalize democracy is building a social movement. This is more than about amending the U.S. Constitution. This is to achieve, to build a world that we want to create with our values and our vision. So part of this is identifying what our values are. And it turns out when we did this exercise in Cordova, we recognized